Welcome back. The National Prosecuting Authority hopes the sentencing of former SAA board chair Dudu Myeni sends a strong message that whistleblowers will be protected. The Johannesburg Magistrate's Court fined Myeni 120,000 rand or 2 years behind bars for disclosing the identity of a protected witness while testifying before the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. Half of the sentence is suspended for 5 years. Well, in November 2020, when Myeni appeared virtually at the Zondo Commission, she revealed the identity of Mr. X on several occasions. That was despite an order being handed down to protect his identity and warnings from Justice Raymond Zondo. Myeni was then charged with obstructing justice. In June, she entered a plea bargain, and today an agreement was reached. Myeni will pay the fine in 2 installments or face that time behind bars. To discuss, we're joined by the head of legal affairs at OUTA, Advocate Stefanie Fick. Thank you for being with us, Advocate. So she's been fined 120,000 rand. She's already paid some, so it looks like she is taking the fine, but half is suspended. So effectively, 60,000 rand. Is that enough for potentially putting a whistleblower in danger?
It is a good question, because I think from a civil society point of view, from just society's point of view, I think unfortunately the answer has to be no. I think we've seen the damage that state capture has done. Obviously, I think we know what damage there is to whistleblowers, and the damage that state capture has done to whistleblowers who came to the fore, who said, I'm not going to stand for this, the way they were handled, and then obviously, that in some instances it led to whistleblowers' deaths. So if you take all of that aggravating circumstances into account, I still think that the answer is no. I would also like to consider, or let us consider the fact that, this is not just obstruction of justice. This was, I think, also a total disregard for the court process, for the fact that a judge has said, please don't do it. We also were part of a court case in terms of which we declared a delinquent director. And one has to say that there's a general, this feeling about Stalingrad trying to just extend litigation and if you take all of that into account, one really has to ask, is a fine of 60,000 rand enough? But more importantly, is that going to be a deterrent for any future offenders?
Yeah. Well, her lawyers brought up what you've just brought up, that she has been declared a delinquent director after your case, and also said she's a first-time offender. She'll be turning 60 in October. Effectively, she has been barred from all corporate life, correct?
Yes. She cannot be, I won't put it as corporate life, she cannot be a director of any company. She's been barred for life for being a director of any company, whether that's state-owned or private.
All right, and they're saying she hasn't earned as a result since 2017. It's also not the end of the road, because the state capture inquiry recommended probes into her. Do you expect there could be more?
Yes. And hopefully there is more. If you look at, we've declared her in terms of a civil action, declared her a delinquent director. But there hasn't been any prosecutions, in other words, criminal prosecutions, where she stand a chance to maybe go to jail. SAA, I think, is a sore point, because we know where SAA is currently. I mean, the government is really struggling keeping it afloat. There's deals going on to see if we can't keep SAA. SAA was a very good brand. And I really think that SAA is one of those SOEs, a clear example of, if you do not have the right people in leadership positions, what corruption can do to an SOE. And I have to say that, a lot of people will say, but why should I care about SAA? I can't even afford a plate of food. That is the point. While the government is bailing out an SOE like SAA, less money is left in the fiscus call social problems. Now, how many people are still without electricity while we are, we're complaining about load shedding, but there's people without electricity, without running water. Our kids still have to walk to school miles and miles, and is our education system up to standard? So, we really hope that the prosecuting authority will have a look at it, because accountability is important.
Yeah.
And I think South Africa is screaming for more accountability. So on the one hand, one can say, good, well done to the NPA, but I don't think we have to accept at least there's accountability. Of course, there should be accountability, but there should be accountability that also sends a message.
Yeah, so it's important that justice is seen to be done. And of course, the SAA employees suffered, customers suffered, but you've made it much bigger in terms of taxpayer money that was diverted there. Remind us finally of the importance of the testimony of Mr. X here, because she's admitted to deliberately naming Mr. X. He was the owner of a construction company, said to have received payments.
I think if you have to read between lines, and I think people will agree with me, she probably knows who he was, because they were friends. The allegations, if I'm not mistaken, was that he received money, and then he got instructions from Ms. Myeni in order to pay over a certain amount, made available cash to her, and then pay certain monies over to the Jacob Zuma Foundation. So one has to accept that you probably knew who he was, or still know who he is. The fact of the matter remains is that he wanted to remain anonymous, and that the Judge Zondo at the State Capture Commission ordered that his name should not be mentioned. So there's two levels of, firstly, the bigger scheme of things, the fact that we need to, whistleblowers are struggling in this country. Any whistleblower that has blown the whistle on state capture, they struggle emotionally. That is if they are still alive, if I may, and then struggle with getting jobs. People do not want to employ them. Really I don't think our legislation protects whistleblower to the extent that they should. And how many people will really feel take it upon themselves to, after witnessing what whistleblowers go through, why would they put up their hands? And then how are we going to get rid of corruption if people are not brave enough to put up their hands? So firstly, it's about how we deal with a court process and the type of respect we have for a court process like the Zondo Commission, who had an important job to do, fact-finding mission, and came up with recommendations. We spend an enormous amount of money for the Commission to do their jobs, and then the plight for whistleblowers.
All right, many would agree with you around the concerns around whistleblowers. Thank you very much. Advocate Stefanie Fick, OUTA Head of Legal Affairs.